Federation of time banks like California time.
All right, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I hope you guys have enjoyed this party up until now, and will continue to enjoy it. We're very happy to have you here at the Growing Home. You know, our goal here is really just to show everyone kind of what is possible in, you know, a suburban space. So if you were driving up here and you saw the other houses along this street, that's exactly what this house looked like 5 years ago. And most of this transition, most of what you see here today has actually happened in the last year. So that's really just, you know, what I want to share with all of you is that the world we live in right now has lots of problems, and this is just, you know, what I see as one small solution to some of those problems. Our family, you know, in the last few years has gone from mildly healthy to very extremely healthy, and we want to share that with you. We want to learn with you. We want to teach you and teach each other, and we want you all to have chickens.
I'll drink to that.
So we organized this panel here tonight. We have some very distinguished guests who are going to share with you some very valuable information. I myself am going to be on the panel, and my brother Ro, he's going to lead the discussion. But we're going to start off with just some, you know, let everyone on the panel give their introduction and tell you about the work that they're doing. And then we'll actually get into the questions, and a few of our guests have brought some pictures. And I'll just give a short introduction to everyone here, and then I'll let them do the rest. Okay, so on the very end here, we have my friend Carter Wallace. Carter is a just graduated Master Gardener in training. And Carter also has produced a radio show over the last 5 weeks called Focus on Food, which the Growing Home was on. Next to Carter is Mark Rice. Mark works with Carter on the Focus on Food show. He is also a Master Gardener. He works on the Pasadena Learning Gardens in Pasadena. Next is Gail Murphy. She's the founder of a organization called Ripe Communities, in which people in a local neighborhood get together and exchange produce that they grow themselves. Yvonne Savio, she is the head of the UC Cooperative Extension Common Ground Gardening Program, which includes the Master Gardener program. And that's myself. And then this is Dan Yuhasz. He is a professor at Cal Poly Pomona in the John T. Lyle Center for Regenerative Studies. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so we'll just go in order, I guess. And yeah, or let's we'll go in order. Okay. Oh yeah. Also, I didn't introduce my brother, so he'll introduce himself.
My name is Kumar. I am.
Chris, can you stand up? Stand up, bro. Stand up.
Okay. My name is Kumar. I'm Rishi's older brother, and I kind of manage the media outreach for the Growing Home, and I run a blog called localblue.com, which I hope many of you have already heard about. It is a blog covering urban farming and sustainability, and we have one of our, several writers here that write for Local Blue, and if anyone would be interested in contributing, we're always looking for great new content and trying to really pump out the articles in the coming year. So I'm going to be moderating this panel. since I've been following urban farming for the past 5-6 years, I have plenty of interesting questions to ask people, and this is a very distinguished panel to be asking those questions too. Are we going to go through slide presentations first, or?
I think we can. Can everyone see the? Yeah. So we'll just go in order. Let's go.
John's getting you a mic.
Can everyone hear us okay?
Yeah.
So we don't need a mic. Okay. Yeah, we're good. Right? It's a small space. Just project when you speak.
But the recording also.
Oh, yeah. Let's get where else not okay.
Okay.
We're one. We have two heads, so I'll do the first half. So, as I said, my name's Mark Rice. 4 years ago, I started an organization in Pasadena called Pasadena Learning Gardens, and it was really initially to create support communities for people doing school gardens. Because people, they all kind of felt alone, and there were amazing numbers of gardens that I came across that had been deserted. And from that, our mission has kind of grown to one initially of resourcing communities to grow more food and to live more sustainable lives. And then we've started working with another nonprofit in the area, and our mission is broadening even further. And we realized that we really are an incubator for communities, and that we could incubate communities around local food issues. But really, when we do this, and it was something that came out of an urban ecosystems agriculture class that went on at the Huntington for like 6 months a year ago, we were all brought in because we were selected to be the people who could disseminate information about Mediterranean climate food forests. And there's a big project going on at the Huntington with this Huntington Ranch. But when we got there, everyone there who had been doing garden projects for over a few years had seen the transformative power of people coming together and working with nature to address these pressing societal issues. And it was really rather exciting that here you're trying to grow some food, but what you're getting, the food is great, and it may be the third best thing you get out of it. Because the two, building community and really getting tight with your neighbors and understanding and working together to feed kids better and create space where kids can play in nature, that was profoundly satisfying. And then just kind of the natural systems awareness that came out of it. So we realized that, I spent a couple of years tooling around with another master gardener, former master gardener, Chris Martinez, and we did programs for kids, and we tried to maintain gardens with 8-year-olds. And it's just, you're never going to end up with anything that looks like this if you only have 8-year-olds helping you. I have learned this the hard way. So we came to understand that we needed to have a broader vision of being digital storytellers. And so this kind of combination of digital storyteller and community incubator led to Carter, who has been, just my right hand for the last year, and who showed up last summer and went through a Victory Garden class, and now the Master Gardener program, was down at Occupy LA and hooked up with Alan Minsky, who has ended up becoming a great friend and really getting us this incredible opportunity to have this radio program, and he'll tell you about that.
Hi, my name is Carter Wallace. Like he said, we have a show on KPFK for those of you who aren't familiar. Most of you are, because Rishi and the Growing Home were on the program. And real briefly, we try to address certain themes every show, and that is food policy, access. We're big gardeners, so we emphasize what we can do to empower our own access to fruits and vegetables and healthy foods. Healthy nutrition, preparation, and that's the voice of Rosie Devine here in the green. And then building community through food. And some of the guests we've featured, Eric Knudsen wrote the Urban Homesteading book, The Growing Home, of course, Fermentation Forum, how to make kefir, kombucha, traditional sodas, the Cottage Food Bill with Mark Stambler, the guy who was arrested after the LA Times covered a story of him baking bread in his backyard. Of course, GMOs, Prop 37. This show really is a community resource, and I want to announce that at every chance that I get. that this show, if I do say so myself, has been amazing. And it's been amazing not because of what we do, but because we have the great opportunity to step out of the way and let people like Pearl, Rishi, and Ro come and talk. We have people like Eric Knudsen who come show up. We have people like Gail and Yvonne who come and bless our program. And it's really so easy to do what we do. And so I want everybody here to understand that this is a community resource unlike any I have ever seen. And of that I am proud. Because I've never seen a food show that will talk about GMOs, how to make cheese, how to keep chickens, and mud baron on school gardens. I mean, give me a break, right? So stay tuned. We're going to go dark for a little bit, but we'll emphasize our internet presence. We're going to be doing some podcasts probably on farmers markets, community gardening, maybe some other things. We'll have a special in September, which I anticipate will be on GMOs. We potentially have Vandana Shiva coming to town on the 30th. I will let you all know. And then we'll likely come on after the elections in November on the regular. And I will say that one of the great mantras of the show is one of the great mantras of the Growing Home, and that is to stop consuming and start producing. And I want to excite everybody, especially if you're here and you're like, I want to stop consuming and start producing, but there's no way I can do this, right? Because Rishi is anointed in every sense of the word. There's no doubt about it. Everything he touches will turn green. That's not even my case, by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. But there's so many ways that we can stop consuming and start producing. And I just want to invite everybody, for example, there's so much to do right now. And what all of us feel an anxiety about where we are culturally, this moment in time. And there's so many ways that we can engage there. And gardening happens to be one of my favorite, and I invite anybody who's not already there to come get your hands dirty by whatever means you can.
And so to close with the microphone, that's probably best. What's your name? Again, just so grateful to be here and to be a part of this distinguished panel. So thank you very much.
Just to let you all know, we do have all of our archives linked at our website, and so you can hear these 5 shows in our pilot. It's all at PasadenaLearningGardens.org.
And remember to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Focus on Food FM.
We've only said that 100 times.
If you want to pester the station, we love that. I can give you the number if you can remember it. It's 818-985-2711, and you can call KPFK and tell them you are so excited that something like this would actually be on the air. So.
You can post it on the Growing Home.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, they do listen. It's funny.
Shall I stand or shall I sit? Okay. I'm Gail Murphy. I live in Altadena and have for probably 16 years or so. And 5 years ago, we got to the point where our berry bushes were producing more than, the freezer was already stocked, the jam was already made, and then the next crop came. So my boys set up a berry stand in the front of the house, and this is how old my little one was. He's 8 years old now, but that picture, this is on our homepage, rifealtadena.com, and what we do now is we have a whole community where we will post what we have extra of that you can come by and pick up, or sometimes people will post that they want something in exchange. But not typically, because I've tried to give the example to the whole group of 220 some members now, to just share what you have extra of. So if you plant something, sometimes it dies. But if you keep on planting, you'll find the plant or the tree or something that will work for you in your yard. So, if you've tried things and they just don't work, I always say keep on planting, because you will find. So they've changed it to Oh, the second under pages, share fairs at the park. Yeah, that's the new like little catch thing, share fair. So we meet once a month on the last Sunday of the month. In the summertime, we'll do a mid-month, mid-week swap too. Okay, go to the next slide. We've become popular, so we want other people to do the same thing. So this is our Ripe Communities page, ripecommunities.com, and we have our communities listed, which right now is Altadena. We've been around for 5 years. Arcadia Temple City started about a year ago, and then the leader's mom got sick, and she is temporarily in Oregon, but she'll come back, and that group will get going. And then we have Ripe West Covina, which is probably the closest to here. And I believe they swap, is it, who knows?
It's the
First Sunday
of the month? 'Cause I know
5:30.
at 5:30, okay.
Yeah, at Cortez Park on Citrus.
Hey, Doug, hi.
Hey, Gail.
One of our early members that would drive out to see us. Because Doug's got quite the setup in the backyard too. Anyway, so we would like to have more communities, and we have funds to help you get started, and I will help teach you what you need to know so that you can do the same sort of thing. Okay, let's go through. These are just, this is July swap. I think it's last year, July. You can just go through the picture so you can kind of get an idea of what we do. We just, sometimes we'll bring a basket of what we've got. So this was July, and we had pumpkins and macadamia nuts, and you can see some eggplant and greens in the background. And all kinds of herbs sometimes, and greens. Apples, lemons, grapefruit. Just another view, garlic maybe in there too. This is an Egyptian walking onion, which is funny because the other thing that works really well for a group is questions that come up. So someone once posted, does anyone have this? And most of us had never heard of it, but several people had it in their yards, and then it's kind of gone sort of like what they say viral. Now like all of us have it in our gardens. I have it too. So sometimes we get these esoteric plants that kind of show up and spread around. Yeah, squash, the famous squash. Oh, this is Patty. She was one of the gals that came by our berry stand and said, my plum tree gets super ripe. Let me get your information and I'll call you. And that's how it kind of struck me, is the people that came by the berry stand would say like, oh, this is what's growing in my backyard. They'd want to talk about it. And a lot of time they'd want to share.
This is the voice of
Like the
God
voice of,
speaking.
yeah, exactly.
If you sing, it'll be better.
That's my one talent. I can't sing. So, let me out.
Excuse me. Interrupt you.
So it really was the people in the community that inspired me to set up this group, and you know, we have other trees too. We actually live on 3/4 of an acre, and so we have a lot of old fruit trees, including grapefruits. And do you guys know what feijoa is? Do you have feijoa?
Pineapple guava?
Yeah. So they all get ripe at once, by the way, within a 2-week period. We used to end up with 50 pounds at a time. There's goat cheese on this side, and wrapped up in wrappers. That shows up sometimes. And a few other things. We we mostly do what we grow ourselves, but I talk to everyone that applies. So someone said, I make granola, and I'd seen her granola at the urban Altadena farmers market, and premium stuff, huge nuts and coconut and ginger and all kinds of stuff besides oatmeal. And so I said, if you can keep it organic, go ahead and bring it if you don't mind, trading for produce. And so now we have, most months, granola shows up too. People bring their pets to walk them. We have dogs. We've had horses show up at our swaps. Goats. More apples, lemons. Okay, so this is from I took this shot today before I left. What you can click on, and so I'll just show you a little bit about classes. I think is next, and so we've started. What happened? Go ahead. What? I'll keep going. Oh, I know why that's there. If you go back, this is all our previous past classes and our upcoming classes. We still need to. We're doing solar cooking, solar oven cooking in August, but our speaker hasn't figured out his dates yet. And this is, you can go to our website and see all of our past classes. We've had everything from like how to preserve and use acorns, which you can just walk on the street and get, at least in Pasadena. I've done a grafting class. We've had square foot gardening, herbal remedies, seed saving, native plants for your yard is our last one. Yeah, I don't stand there. We've had some like Brad Lancaster come out and talk to us too, which was cool. Okay, let's go ahead and go forward. So here's Doug. He taught a cheese making class for us, and we were in the Altadena Community Center for this. Go ahead and go forward. And then the cheese is at the edges there, and doesn't that look great? We've had a couple of potlucks, and I used to go home and say, man, everyone in our group can cook so well. It's beyond belief. Finally, the second potluck I went, wait a second. I think it's the ingredients we're using. Just, I mean, you forget how good food is. And this is a jam making class. And yeah, we had a couple of guys teach it. Awesome. Go ahead. Oh, and then we have a community referrals. So, right, it's turned out to be kind of like talking to your neighbor over the fence. Like, you know, what can you tell me about? So we have, I guess we took garden and garden supplies. But you can go visit the community referrals and click on and search for whatever you want. And if it's not there, you ask the listserv, you know, do you guys have a good place to get chicken supplies? And then everyone that knows will tell you. Oh, and something new we just started is a wiki. So right here, a ripe wiki. So all of this information that gets put on our, goes through the listserv, we encourage people to collect and then make information about our area, like what grows well in Altadena, how to save tomato seeds. There's just a few things up right now because this is one of our newest endeavors. And I think that's probably it. So yeah, we started out just swapping stuff, and now we swap information. The classes started out when we find out someone knew how to do something, and we're all like, oh, I want to know. And it just keeps growing, and it's all volunteers. So personally, what I need to do is figure out how to get more people involved that want to volunteer, or get schools with volunteers, or something like that. And yeah, that's it.
Hi everybody, I'm Yvonne Savio. Run the Master Gardener program and the Common Ground Garden program for the University of California Cooperative Extension in LA County. And I have some information here that I'll pass around. I think I have enough of two of them, but not enough of this one, so I'll describe them and then I'll pass them out. The main thing that we do is we train people how to garden. Yay. And starting with that first tomato plant that, you know, a little kid will have grown, and then 30 years later they decide they want to do more of that. And this was one of the situations that the bad news of the economy and obesity and diabetes ended up probably 10 times as many people calling our office asking for information about how to start a garden. So this is what got us to start a program that we call Grow LA Victory Gardening. And this is open to everybody in LA County. And we offer it twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. And there's usually about 20 classes each time, because our master gardeners, Mark and Carter will be this time, and Jill is going to be doing one this time, and Luis is going to be, so you've got some connectors right here. And Rishi, you ought to do one here as well. So,
Good, Rishi.
in any case, what these are is 4 classes, usually on a Saturday or a Sunday, and it's 3 hours each time, and it's the basics of gardening. And it's taught by a master gardener, and it's not only that class, but it's the extension after that. The group of people, whoever it is that has signed up for those classes, they decide how many times and when they want to get together after that to continue what we're calling a neighborhood garden circle. Because each of these locations, we hope that it's going to be people from that local area that are signing up for that particular class. And therefore they're neighbors. And they will have some things to share in terms of perhaps starting too many lettuce seedlings, and so they want to share them with other folks. Or their lettuce is getting eaten by some mysterious insect, and so they want to share that query with other folks and say, what's going on in your garden? How come only mine's getting eaten up? And so it's a sharing thing that we really want to foster. It's not just come, learn something, and then you're on your own. That isn't what we do. It's that sharing part afterwards. And we've been doing this. This will be the 3rd year that we're doing this twice a year. And we get about 400 folks out of LA County for each session. And that's about 20 people in 20 different locations and time slots. So it's usually over a 2 or 3 month period of time. And it's one of those weekends. So there's a lot to choose from, even if you end up signing up for one that is, because the schedule is when you can do it, even though it's not in your immediate locale. So what I'm going to pass out here, this is our flyer. On the one side, it talks about our mission statement, which is helping low-income folks to grow more food sustainably. And the different programs that we have, and then on the other side is the gardening helpline. So if you have a gardening question, you can either email or phone. And with the email, of course, you can send in photographs of what that nasty thing is that's eating your tomato, whatever it is. So that's that flyer. Now, initially, when I started took over the Master Gardener program in the mid-90s, I started getting tons of emails, as we all do now. And I decided that there were so many different kinds of resources that I was getting that I wanted to spread it as far and wide as possible. And so I was starting to send all that information to our Master Gardeners. But then I started some email lists, which was just the general public, people who were never going to be master gardeners, but that were involved in either community gardening and food security or school gardening. And so I started 2 separate email lists. And that's what this invitation is here for you to join if you're not already on one of those lists, or both of them, and you are interested in that. Now, the announcement flyer goes out, if you get on these lists, or just one or the other, the announcement flyer of our Grow LA classes goes out, and that's probably mid-August or a little later is going to be when I'm going to send the announcement of what classes we will be having in the fall, which will probably range between September, October, and November. We usually have them end about Thanksgiving, because that's generally when our gardens pretty much start shutting down for the winter. So you really want to have things planted and growing strongly enough that then you will be able to be eating them over the winter time. So that's why we end the classes then. In the spring, the announcement will go out in the end of January or February, and that will be for classes in March, April, and May. So that's the main thing of getting onto that e-list. In mid-November is when I send out the announcement for the Master Gardener course for that next year. However, I will warn you, Master Gardeners is very difficult to get into because I have only 50 slots and we do it only once a year, and you're required to do a lot of volunteering. And that's what the major thrust of the program is. It's not just a gardening class. It is a training volunteers class. We expect you to do all this good work after you've done the training. And consequently, this is one reason I really want to emphasize the value of the Grow LA classes. That's what everybody can take. And most folks really just want a good start at how to get gardening. And here, after that class, you have your own personal master gardener to continue meeting with. And when you have questions, you'll ask them, and they'll know the resources to go to get the answers back to you. So, the third thing I wanted to pass out, and I have about only enough for about half of you, so maybe if you can share. This is a new flyer that has come out from the university. It's Meet the Beneficials. These are all the good guys, the ladybugs and the lacewings. And the neat thing is it shows what they look like when they're little, when they are larvae, or when they're eggs. So that as you're walking through your garden, you'll know which of those, if it's a good guy or a bad guy, before you even see the adult. So this is on the university website. But again, if you would like, if you don't get one now, then just email me and tell me that you want that flyer, and I will send you the link. Okay, I think that's it for me.
Okay, I've already talked to, most of you already know who I am, hopefully. I'm just going to say a few things to touch on what Carter said. Yeah, really what I'm trying to encourage everyone to do is stop consuming and start producing some of the things that we used to produce ourselves. Everyone used to be a gardener, everyone used to be a farmer, everyone used to maybe have chickens or keep a cow or keep a goat. There's so many things that we can do to produce for ourselves and to really become more self-reliant. And that's what I want to encourage all of you to do. One thing I'm going to disagree with Carter on is that I am not some kind of savant. And anyone can do what I've done. I have some special circumstances which allow me to take the time to do all of this. And I know, everyone leads a busy life, but this is just my encouragement to you that start somewhere, grow something. My first plant was a basil plant, and when I picked the first leaves off of it, it was like the most magical, that was like the most magical moment of my life. And then I started to plant seeds, and then you start to save seeds, and it really just gets more and more magical. And so that's for me what really got me into it. And I encourage you to just start somewhere. Start with one thing. You don't need to rip out all of your lawn now. You need to do it in the future. Yes. but you can start with a small patch. I think that's all I got to say. Yeah, and me and my mom will be teaching some classes on August 11th. We have a few flyers here. I'm going to be teaching a beginning gardening course. It's Saturday, August 11th, from 10 p.m. to 11:30 a.m. here. And then after that, from 12 to 2, my mom is going to teach you guys how to cook Indian food.
All right.
You can ask some of the people that are here all the time.
She
It's the
can
best.
cook real good.
Yeah.
No one better.
And there's like 20 people who eat here every week. So it's really good.
Yeah, they're full recommendations, yes.
So please come. It's the first time she's going to be teaching a cooking class, and we hope to do some more of these in the future. And it's $25 for each class, or I think $45 if you do both. All right? Thank you.
I'm here all the time.
Testing. Okay. Hi everybody, my name is Dan, and I teach over at the Lyle Center for Regenerative Studies. I do have a slideshow, so while that is booting itself up. When I talked to Rishi earlier this week, I was prepared for 30 to 40 minutes, but he said, cut it down to 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to tell you the most important things that I've been working on lately. So, I am not a full-time professor there, I'm just a part-time, which allows me an awful lot of time to work on food issues. Particularly the Food Justice Club, which we just started, and then I'm working on some other things, the Food Systems Working Group, which we're going to try to include the community in on this. If you haven't noticed, I am not strictly in the production side of food. I am in the justice side of food, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I'm also leading the Sustainability Cooperative there, which is everything related to sustainability. Like a lot of folks that I know in the food movement, I have a rather unique background, as a lot of other folks do. One thing unique about me is I traveled across the country in the year 2000. The year 2000 was a significant year in the food movement. That's when we changed from calling it organic to calling it local. And I lived with farmers, I worked with farmers, I discussed with farmers the transition we were going to be going through. I began my studies in sustainable agriculture before, in the mid-90s. So I knew what it was like back when we called it organic. The second thing that's unique is that I'm an engineer. I do not have a horticulture or plant science background. And the significance about being an engineer is that I understand systems theory. And I teach sustainability from systems theory point of view. And from systems theory point of view, food movement is about justice. It's not about production. And we already heard that. We heard that from Carter. We also heard it from Rishi. It's access to land. It's access to water. Sure, we can produce. But do we have the right to? Do they have the right to have chickens here? Do we have the right to know what's in our food? You know, everything is seeping in rights. Without rights, you know, we're soon going to die with the stuff that we're being forced to eat. So the very foundation of sustainability itself is justice and rights. Next slide. So the Food Justice Club is actually pretty unique, unique around here. We are just chartering actually next week. But we've been around for, if you notice yourself in the slides, let me know. Some of you are in here. This, I think I talked enough about justice. This is just our way of bringing the food movement to the people. Next slide. So the Food Justice Club has actually made its way to Oakland, California. This is where we got the inspiration for the Food Justice Bicycle Tour, which we had this last Mother's Day. So we got to see a lot of urban agriculture in Oakland. And they are doing some very remarkable things out there that we here in Pomona, Claremont, could only hope to do. So my students were very excited about having gone there. We went there specifically for a food justice conference put on by the Community Food Security Coalition. So we can show some slides of that. Nestor, who is going to be the president of the Food Justice Club, is there on the left-hand side, protesting the Taco Bell, the unfair wages for the Florida Immokalee workers. I think it was Trader Joe's. That's who we were protesting. Next slide. We've also been to Santa Cruz to see the Center for Agroecology there. There's a lot of good things happening on college campuses now. And Cal Poly Pomona is just entering the fray. And we want everybody to be part of that too. Anyways, slides from that. What we're mostly trying to do though is reach out and show urban ag to not just our students but everybody else. We want to go out in the community, see what's going here. This is through Claremont and Pomona. This is what we did in December. We also came here on this very same tour. And all the farmers that we went to go see were very generous. Next slide. Here's our very popular urban ag bike tour, which we did on Mother's Day this last year. Up the upper left-hand side is everybody who attended. We had about 36 people show up that day with their own bicycles. And we bicycled from downtown Pomona, went all the way up to just north of the botanical gardens there, across from Claremont High School, and bike back down to downtown Pomona. 12-mile round trip. We've been to Altadena at the Dorothian Ranch. We've been working with those folks for 3-4 years now. Various things, and now they are doing urban ag. Mariposa Dairy, you may know some of these folks. They're also in Altadena. Next. Local food fairs. We started this about 2010. This concept was to turn the idea of local food into a festival on campus. We tried to source as much local food as we possibly can. We've done it 3 times now. The first 2 were pretty overwhelming success. Over 300 people attended each one. We get roughly about 50 to 60% of our food locally. Well, close to Cal Poly Pomona. Local's a difficult term to describe. But anyways, here's pictures from it. It was a raging success. We're trying to continue to do that, but they're very difficult to put on. So we need to build a greater community on campus for that first. Next slide. We do go out into the communities and help them build gardens. This is the one downtown Pomona across from one of the churches. Who's from Pomona? Which church is this? It's off of, it's a Presbyterian. First Presbyterian and First, yeah.
First Baptist?
No, it's not what it is.
It's not Tri-Cities.
No, not Tri-Cities. Anyways, that's an idea of how we interface with them, and then the Tri-City Gardens, I think. Well, I don't have pictures of Tri-City Gardens here. This is what's going on campus. I've got my students to do some guerrilla gardening there.
Awesome.
Because the red tape on a college campus is impossible. We would put in the request for something like this, and we wouldn't see it probably this decade. So I told them just sneak up there. This is on top of the CLA building. You're probably familiar with it. It's the pointy building that you can see from the freeways. They have 2 huge planters up there that I told my students to go and plant. And they are successful today. We also recently, this last summer, planted the next one. Is a herb garden behind the main, what is it? The dining hall for the students. The Los Olivos Commons herb garden. I don't know how I ended up with only 1 photograph there, but anyways, we've built now an herb garden behind so that the chef can use it for his recipes on campus. We are way behind on campus as far as using Cal Poly's produce in the cafeterias and the commons, but we're going to change that. School gardens, this happens to be in Redlands that we went out to help them maintain Cope Elementary, I believe, school garden. So we do school gardening for communities as well. Here's some other things we have our hands in. We're part of the yet to be granted Pasadena Unified School District Farmers School Grant. We've started a student-run cafe. It's just beginning. We're beginning also the Food Systems Working Group, and we're about to unveil our wonderful truck farm. So be looking for that, at least on our Facebook page. It's not even going to be coming because it's very difficult to drive that thing around. But if you've seen the documentary Truck Farm, it looks just like that. Here's my place in Norco. I raise goats and occasionally some chickens. So I try to practice what I preach.
my goats is a mix between pygmy and Saanen. These I happen to live in a very dangerous area, so I have to bring my goats inside. This is, if it looks like that's inside, that's because it is. When they're babies, they have to come in at night. Otherwise, they'll be eaten by coyotes. And the next picture will show the people that I live with. They're helping me maintain my urban farm. I think that's the last slide. Is that? Okay, I'll wait for questions.
So I'm just going to ask each of our panelists a few questions, and you can continue with the evening after that. And I wanted to focus specifically in this panel, narrow it down to urban farming specifically. And just to define what exactly urban farming is. Urban farming is the production of food in the modern city context, city or suburb. And what it is essentially taking back food production and putting that into the context of a situation where, for the first time earlier in 2000 or late 90s, we officially crossed that mark where the global human population has now shifted from primarily rural to primarily living in cities. So the bulk of humanity now lives in the urban context, in cities. So that makes urban farming all of a sudden very impactful and a very important issue. So we're going to focus on urban food production, and that's something all of us are involved in here, and that's something that the growing home is. And I'd like to start off by asking everyone, and let's keep this really short, just a couple sentences. Why are you passionate about urban farming? And what is it about urban farming that really gets you going? Why are you passionate about it? Just a few sentences, keep it short. Start with Carter.
To quote one of our guests, Neelam Sharma, who is the director of the Community Services Unlimited, it is the nonprofit arm of the former Black Panther Party in Southern California. She did a community assessment when she got the position that she has, and they asked people about their lives. Through this study, they came to abolish a tremendous number of myths about, actually I'm winded from lifting an amp, isn't it amazing? I'm out of shape. I spent too much time editing behind a computer. But, so after that study, they found that people don't want to be eating crap, frankly. And any story that we're telling of like, oh, those people in South LA, they just want that. Not true at all. People are aware of the issues that they're dealing with. And so they focus their efforts of this entire organization around food. They now maintain 4 urban gardens. They distributed 4 farmers markets selling organic vegetables at the price of conventional. They have training programs. They will plant a tree in your garden. They have identified neighborhood trees, and they will teach you how to prune it, and they will share the excess harvest with the community. Now this organization she nailed it, and it's the same thing that all of our guests have echoed, is that everything relates to food. You can't escape anything in life you get to everything in life through food. You want community, you want clean air, you want soil. Just start with saying yes to a good apple and then find out where it takes you. So that's my excitement about urban. I really do think, to quote Tim Dundon, whose property I just visited for the first time, who's an American hero unsung, and the gardening movement is the answer. And yes, we of course will have him on the show.
And chickens.
And chickens. Only when you can do the visual.
Yeah. IMAX. Yeah, we went to visit and ended up spending about 3 hours on his property, hearing the entire legend. But yeah, it's interesting. I actually wasn't as smart as all those people in South Central because I had kind of lost touch with my food. I was very involved in technology. I was, working crazy hours, and I'd gotten a lot from it. But I went, within a couple weeks, I saw Michael Pollan, and then I saw Alice Waters. And it was this amazing kind of epiphanal thing where suddenly I realized, my uncle used to live in a teepee up in the foothills above Sacramento, and 2 of my uncles used to homestead, and, I went to Santa Cruz, I studied environmental ethics, but I just got caught up in the pace of life. And so I, would go to nice restaurants and eat too much, and it was just one of those things. And I suddenly had this little awakening, and I ended up consulting with a friend who had a landscaping company, and we started working with school gardens and community gardens in the area, and one thing led to another. And it was really, I just needed to reclaim my own food. And so that was really where it came from for me. And then what I found is, I used to lead a Buddhist meditation group, and I used to really be into my spiritual journey. And now suddenly I'm finding all these things are converging. The business thing with local sustainable businesses, and us figuring out how to make sense of a whole new economy where we're redistributing everything. The sense of interbeing with nature and with community that goes on, and just, this incredible good food that really does. You do start to see how your whole outlook and body transform as you change the things that are going in. Just like everyone has been telling me forever. Go bigger.
I'm going to pass around a hot flyer too, that I forgot for Ripe. It has my contact information, a little bit more about our group. I'm going to echo what everyone else is saying probably, but I have chickens, and the first time we got eggs from our chickens, it was just like, wow, this doesn't even taste like an egg. Like, you don't have to put salt on it or anything. It's just like incredible. It's just like so delicious. And so, as I've had the Ripe group longer, and I've planted more things, because you go and visit someone else's yard and you'll get inspired and see how they do things, and you're like, hey, that's a little spot that they put this in. I could do that at home too. So I've noticed that I'm eating so much more of my food that I eat, like from the backyard and from other people's backyard. And that sounds weird, but that's where it comes from. And it's like, if I need something, I can post on the group. Does someone have this? And 4 or 5 people will say, come over to my house, I have something. So, it just, to have the community supporting what you want to have, which is good food, it's just beyond incredible and amazing.
Hi. Well, certainly the taste is what it's all about. I was lucky enough to grow up on a quarter acre where my dad did the fruit trees and my mom did the vegetables. And there were a couple roses, but that was about it in terms of things that couldn't, or at least we didn't eat. So it became something that I knew exactly when things were ripe, because what we would eat each evening was what we picked. And if it wasn't ripe, we didn't eat it that night. It was the next night or the night after that, or else the squirrels got it. So this became a mantra for me, that when I moved up to Davis and worked for the university up there, they had just barely restarted farmers markets. And Davis was the one that started that, the Center of Cooperatives up there. And I got really mad at some of the vendors because it was picked 2-3 weeks prior, and they'd bring them in, and here, this was the first farmer's market. That was supposed to be what you picked this morning or yesterday. And so I got mad, and I started writing articles in the newspaper about go home and grow it. Because this is when you get something that you can pick that tomato and eat it right there, dribbling down your chin. And that's what the yummy part is, and this is what food is supposed to taste like. And you can do it at home yourself. So then moving back down here, we connected with all the folks that were passionate about growing food down here, and that became the first Master Gardener course. And from there on, we've moved ahead and collected all sorts of wonderful folks like these guys who are out there doing all this wonderful stuff. And that's what I hope some of you will join us as well.
I took the Master Gardener course, this previous one, and during that course I was introduced to this idea of primary production. And what that is that's the sum total of all the things that come out of a space. So for this house, you could say the primary production, well, that includes the vegetables we produce, that includes the fruits we produce, that includes the herbs we produce, the medicines we produce, the eggs we produce, but it also includes everything else around the farm. So that includes all the friendships that I've made since starting the growing home. There are 15 to 20 people here that I hang out with on a regular basis that I did not know last year. There are, this whole event is part of the primary production of the growing home. And that is not something that you can have with even the organic farm that produced the best produce 200 miles away. The primary production of that farm is just produce. And urban farming has this opportunity to produce, to have a huge primary production with these types of events, with the friendship, with the community, with the potlucks. I mean, everyone that has spoken has kind of echoed what I've said, and it's incredible. It's been incredible for me to see, just starting with something simple like food, what else can come about. So that's what makes it important for me.
The question again, passionate about urban agriculture? Okay. I'm not just passionate about urban agriculture, but just the whole food movement. It probably started back when I was a little boy. Our family would go out to Indiana, to my uncle's farm. And during the trip, we traveled by car. I lived in Illinois. See all these cornfields. And I thought to myself back then, there's something really wrong about this. I'm going to live to a day when I can prove that there's something wrong about that. And I've actually come to reach that day. I can actually prove that is a degenerative system that is in place. And the systems that we are now creating are regenerative. But I have a blander answer to that question. Even though I do like the taste of food, the urban ag movement is in perfect alignment with what systems theory says is sustainable. Systems theory I view as sort of a crystal ball to the future. And it says that things are going to be reintegrated. Food and people are going to be reintegrated in an era of sustainability. And that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing people in food being reintegrated together instead of being separated out on the farm. That's something really to get passionate about, because we are now part of that. And this was something that could have been foreseen, as well as all sorts of other things that could be foreseen using this type of thinking. So we've just broken ground on what will be one of the greatest revolutions we will ever see with food.
Thank you, Dan. That's a perfect lead-in to my next question. When we think about the slogan "Stop consuming, start producing," it kind of makes you think back. At what point did we stop producing, and when did we become consumers? Because at one point in history we were all producers, and there were no consumers. And there used to be something that existed called the commons, where there used to be this idea that water cannot be owned.
Can you hold the mic?
Land cannot be owned. And at some point, the modern system that we have today came into place, and we can actually trace that back as to where that came from. Somewhere in the 18th century in England, there was something called the enclosure movements. And what that was it was the enclosure of this common space, the enclosure of the forest, the privatization of the forest, the enclosure of land, the privatization of land. And that was done with an intention in mind. People, once they stopped being producers, had to become consumers. So large populations of people that were agrarian, that were producing and living sustainably, all of a sudden now work in a factory for a wage and use that wage to purchase goods in a consuming fashion. So when we frame what's happening now in a historical perspective, it really is, like Dan was saying, revolutionary. What's happening is that we've come so far along in this consumer culture where we realize that that thing that we produced is of higher quality, and of higher quality not only in taste, but in terms of it builds community, it rebuilds community. And that's why food is, like Carter was saying, a unifying issue, because this is something that no one can avoid. Everyone eats food, everyone drinks water, and everyone breathes air. And these are things that used to be part of the commons which have now been privatized. And urban farming is something very significant because we are essentially taking back what was, at some point in history, taken away from the common people. And it's very significant. So what I'm going to ask all of you now is, thinking about that historical perspective of what once was and what could possibly be, how do you see, I'm asking you to make a prediction or to dream, what do you envision as the possible outcomes of the continued growth of urban farming? What are some things that might happen, or that you hope might happen?
Well, the great example is Cuba. And 60% of the produce consumed in Havana is produced in Havana, and they have a comparable population density to Los Angeles. And just let that sink in for a second. What does that look like? That looks like legislation that says no land should sit idle, and it should be used for the common good. And it means that if some investor in Japan is sitting on an empty lot next door to you and waiting for the real estate market to bounce back, he has a year to plant vegetables, or it's your opportunity to plant vegetables in that space. Yeah. So what I see is the sort of the telos of this is a reclaiming, and I'm so glad that you brought this up. This is actually something that Raj Patel brought up in my interview with him, and he writes about it in his book Value of Nothing. That one of the ways we can stop consuming and start producing is to start producing our own philosophy about what it is to be together, about what it is to occupy space, about what it is to make meaning and have an identity that contributes to the flourishing of the human spirit. And so what I see is a producing of new ideas about how we deal with this inertia, this karma of privatization, this karma of private property, when we all sense that it's killing us inside. But how do we do that? Negotiating that nobody wants to, like, you know, replay Soviet communism or anything like this, right? So, for example, in Vandana Shiva's interview, she says we need to restore the commons. Land can be used privately, but there's an education that needs to be changed about what land is. It's for me, it's come down to a personal story of it's not private property. It's a moment of stewardship. So, like, for example, the Kumars have this property, and it's their area of stewardship. And, you know, so anyway, that's my adventure, is how do we engage these questions of private property when it's obviously given given the sort of the prejudices that it has. So.
Wow. I'm gonna say, that's an interesting question. I tend to think. Well, there's a wonderful film I'd recommend, The Economics of Happiness. And we had a screening a couple weeks ago, and friend Hop Hopkins and I kind of facilitated a discussion afterwards, and it tells the story of a Tibetan village that is really living the sustainable life, and then they have a subsidized road built in, and suddenly they can get butter from New Zealand at a third the price of the butter that was being produced locally. But everything was running right, and there was no unemployment. It was an idyllic sort of setting that fell out of order. And, this is a really huge question, because I think that, the future is now with things like RIPE and with the Altadena farmers market and people being trained to take their home produce and sell it to their neighbors, and so they can give it to their neighbor, they can sell it to their neighbor, they can buy it from their neighbor, they can get it given. I think that's what has to start happening. But I think that it's a much bigger thing that is in the long-term interest, and it goes to, the seeds. I mean, seeds are a great place to look at the whole discussion and the way in which Monsanto is looking to control these things, and the way seed banks are being undercut through donations. Like, even people who are trying to do the right thing have ended up part of the problem. And it's a very complex thing when very few people are producing most of our food, and are owning most of the farmland, and so that's the reclaiming of the commons that is going to take a little more thought than this. You have to give me more time.
With both of you, this is a really heavy question, and also an agreement. In fact, I wondered if you read my paper, where I says the future is actually now. And I was like, whoa, we read my paper. No, because I thought about this, and it's like we have to change our mindset about even private property, because this is what I've tried to do in my group, is, if you've got a tree that's got too much whatever, hey, give it to someone. It's going to come back around to you later in some other produce. And so, I stopped thinking about my fruit trees. I mean, yeah, they're mine, but it's like what they bear I can give to the rest of the community. And, it's been amazing. There's one gal told me later on that she was unemployed for a while, and that the swaps that she went to really helped her with her food, bill and such. And that kind of blew me away, because I never had thought about it like that before. But okay, so for the future being now, what I would suggest is find something that you're good at growing, or a commodity that's needed, whether it's eggs or goats and goat cheese. It doesn't even have to be a big project than that. It could be like tomatoes. There's a song that says there's two things you can't buy: true love and homegrown tomatoes. Yeah. You guys heard that song? I love it, because it's like so true. And, so
We'll be on our next radio show. We're there.
But find something that you can make, or produce, or even make, like the granola lady, and then find other neighbors that have something that you are not so good at that you want, and arrange with them to trade. And it doesn't even have to be a tit for tat trade, but or give your stuff to someone, especially if you see that they've got stuff. They'll be generous back. But we've just lost all of these. We've changed, our mindset is not how it should be. But we've also lost all these skills that we've had in the past, like the preserving, so we have our own stuff preserved through the winter, and all those skills, the farmers, and because my parents, farmers, they want to get out from the farm and get to the city, and now my mom is in her 80s, and at one time we were thinking of moving out to the country, and she's like, thinking about it, like, is this a good idea? And she's like, I can't believe I'm thinking of doing this again, because, she grew up with no electricity and no running water and all this sort of stuff. So those skills that these older people have, they know stuff that we don't even know. Even the people that write the books that, think that they know something, there's so much more. So I would also encourage, find a really old person that's lived on a farm and ask them, how do you keep vegetables all winter long? And you're like, what is a root cellar and what do you do with it? I mean, it's just all these skills we've lost, and we need to regain that.
Well, I have the simple answer to it all. And that is, go home and grow.
We want a copy of the video.
And what I'm getting at is that that's really what we're training Grow LA people to do, what we're training master gardeners to do, is go out and look at those places that are unused for food. I mean, grass, for heaven's sake. And grow something there that you can eat, your neighbors can eat, that you can pass along, and just make it be a community of food growers. You know, it isn't something that you wait for some big organization to do. It's something that you go out there and grow the things that you want to eat and share it with everybody else that you know. Simple.
I feel like, you know, when we're looking to the future, we're just the people here are kind of, they're showing, everyone here I feel like has showed me something, that I see myself doing, I think what Carter and Mark are doing on the radio and just, empowering people by spreading this information, by teaching people how to preserve and cook over the radio. I mean, we don't need one focus on food show once a week. We need it like every day and maybe twice a day. And Gail through RIPE, I mean,
sure.
I've been to the RIPE West Covina exchange. I haven't been to the Altadena one, but just from, what I see, if I could have that kind of community in my neighborhood, that's my dream, really. Can you hear me, neighbors? Get a goat. Yeah, so there's all these ideas out there, and people are trying all sorts of different things, and it's really when all those things come together that we're gonna see the change really starting to happen. It's already starting to happen. When we had our grand opening last year, I mean, 50 people showed up, but it wasn't like, I don't know, something is much different now, and the people that are showing up are just so much more interested and so much more like just completely, ready to change, and that was not. I feel like that was not there before, and we're gonna see it happen. It's happening right now, and it's gonna move really fast. So try to keep up.
So the question, I'm always the last one here. So the question again was.
What will happen with urban farming's growth in the future?
With regard to history. Okay, I remember what I had to say about that. A couple different points I want to make. One is our conventional agriculture is based on roughly 100 years of lies. You can start with the biggest one, feeding the world. When was the last year we have ever fed the world? We never have. In honest opinion, the conventional agriculture is designed to starve the world. Then to keep those that 1/3 of the world's population starving and dying. That's what it's there for. What else? Bigger is better. Another lie. We've proven recently that small efficient farms are the best, the optimal size for production. The food pyramid. Another lie. I mean, just years and years and years of lying to us. Our agricultural history needs to be rewritten, and that's what I see in the future. Written based on it was really, it should be written from a sort of political history, a power grab. This is a powerful institution that sort of eliminated regenerative food production systems from the planet, and fortunately it survived. The second point I want to make has something to do with what Carter had to say about property rights. I don't see farms as such in the future. I see that such an integration between people and food that the idea of the concept of a farm is going to be gone. So I think it's kind of even though I feel for the folks that are trying to save the small family farm, particularly the small organic family farm, I don't see that as a worthwhile pursuit. What's better is because the way we have come to define property in this country has been set up to favor large, very politically connected property owners. So the whole purpose of property laws have been to eliminate small producers, to get them off the land. So trying to save these little islands of small producers is senseless in our current system of property rights. What the small farm needs to do is go around the property laws and surround themselves with a community of people and allow a greater community to surround that production of food there. That I see as more viable and then begin to recruit the conventional farmers around them and create their own community out in the middle of where they happen to be. Otherwise, we just let these farmers go. So it's these pockets of regenerative production that I see is being the engines for agricultural production in the future, and the whole concept of a farm will disappear.
So one last question, and let's keep this response pretty brief. So we only have like half an hour left till 10 o'clock, and I want to hear some Spanish guitar. Last question. Urban farming is this global movement. We have rooftop farming going on in China. We have aquaponics in India. There's a company named Bright Farms based out of New York, which just got funded for $5 million to put rooftop farms on top of grocery stores. We're going to start seeing that on the East Coast first, but this is happening. And we all live in Los Angeles, and we have unique weather pattern, we have a unique rainfall pattern, and the way this urban environment is set up is different. We're based on the car. And so how do you see urban farming fitting into the context of Los Angeles and Southern California, Inland Valley here where we are, and just really brief. I know that's a big question, but yeah, let's start with Dan. That's a juicy question for Dan.
Wait, actually, I was so excited to have Dan go first. Can you repeat just the question part?
How do you envision urban farming going forward in the LA context?
Yeah, well, very quickly, rip out all your lawns right now.
Yes.
Do it tomorrow. Don't even wait till next year. Do it now. And then actually do it, and then be like tired of it being ugly. So then you'll just put some drought tolerant
And
like
compost the
native or something.
grass.
Yeah. So I envision a lot of the most brilliant farming techniques to ever be created by mankind. Quite simply, I think that we're going to be put forth the most ingenious, inspiring work that's ever been done in agriculture by virtue of necessity, and because she is the mother of invention, because the human spirit doesn't need to wait for necessity. Because of all these reasons, we will see worm composting, we'll see aquaponics, we'll see vertical farming, we'll see people ripping out lawns, we will see new way. We'll see an integrate, like for example, Brad Lancaster's work, rainwater harvesting for drylands. I think we'll see that people like that. I'll see become rock stars. Actually, just to because it's in my mind, we'll have and let me just as a fantasy see that the cultural shift will take place, such that we do see Tim Dundon, and because Yvonne went to the same high school as David Lee Roth. But then she is, in my heart, the far bigger rock star. People like Yvonne and Tim Dundon as the real rock stars. So, yeah, that's what I see.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, we have been thinking a lot about this. I mean, it's fascinating. Go to community gardens, because it's a fascinating thing. I think most gardeners actually are, not real good with people. I came to it late. But they're people who get along maybe better with plants than people, and that's kind of how they became good gardeners. And so you go into a community garden, and there's this kind of enforced intimacy. And so, in fact, I'm in one of the oldest community gardens. We've got big plots, and we have Scott Kleinrock, who is a grad of Pomona and is running this Huntington Ranch project, and he's got a plot. And he's exploring how to create this wild, self-seeding environment. He's got carrot plants that are this tall now, they've gone completely to seed. And you can't even walk into his plot, but it's between two plots of people who are very traditional and organized and linear in the way they look at their garden. And it's cool because, that the experimentation, the thinking about it is really happening with Cal Poly, with people like, the Huntington Ranch Project, with people like Darren Butler, with people ripping out their lawns. And we're going to figure out how to deal with it. We do live in a very arid environment. and so we're going to be ripping out the roads, hopefully. And the interesting thing is that eventually, gas and water are going to be 5 times, 10 times as expensive. And when we get to that point, we better have been thinking about it now. It's really going to make a difference. And so it's just that issue. And so we're championing this concept of community farms. And we really think that doing crop rotation for community members and then delivering the excess by wheelbarrow to boxes in the front of each house is really the way it should go. And since we started talking about it, we now think you need a beekeeper and you need a medicinal herbs person and you probably need a homebrew person at some point.
Yeah.
And that you can go down this path and really start, as a community saying, what do we need? With the kids, each year when we were setting up the garden in the fall, we would sit down and I'd go, there was a time where there wasn't Target. And that we had to decide what it is that we're going to grow, and it's the medicines, and it's the food, and it's the things we're going to build stuff out of, and we need to collectively make these decisions. And they always looked at me like I was just crazy, but I know there's somewhere that they're kind of thinking about it in the back of their minds, and that's what we need to do. And I really think it's by street, by neighborhood, that we really need to start having those discussions, because eventually, I'm from southeastern Iowa, my family is, and there's an area of the Amana colonies, and it's 6 villages, and each one is 1 day by ox cart from the other, which is only about, 1.5 miles, 2 miles. It's not very far. And you can see why European cities are all, it's like, oh, they're in the next village, but it's, 200 kilometers. So, I think everything's going to go hyper-local. I think it's very exciting, here or somewhere else.
Yeah, what to say? Carter's still thinking like me. The rainwater harvesting, there's so much water that runs off your roof, but you just don't know it. And so we got to figure out how to keep all of that, because water's going to be so expensive. And if anything ever happens to our water supply, and you still have all your trees planted and such, it's like, how do you still get those to grow? But also, I wanted to mention, I thought of seed saving. You guys probably know more about this than I do, but when you plant a seed, it grows a certain way. If you give it more water than naturally occurs, the seed will start changing. You give it less water, it'll start changing. If we can learn to get more natural native plants and figure out how to eat them, and this even goes to, I also go on hikes to find wild edibles. I think we're going to have to kind of change a little bit about what we want to eat. It's not necessarily going to be something that we can pour a bunch of water onto. And then save the seeds and plant them and try and be as seasonal as possible. Don't put more water on them, so then the plant starts to change more to adjust to the climate that we have. I'd say that would be something to do.
I'll be real short. I have to admonish my 2 master gardeners here who have talked about ripping out lawns. Don't rip them out.
Sorry.
Plant on top of it. You've got all that great nitrogen in that grass. That's the basis of your new bed for growing everything. So
You're right. We were going to compost it.
it stays local, right on that space. And that's really is all my thing. It's just be local, do it yourself, and the whole community that you then will grow right next to you of the beekeepers and the chickens and the whole thing. So it becomes kind of a mini barter society for those folks who really care. The ones who can't, or it's just they're up here, eggs still come out of boxes to them. Everybody has their own way of living anyway, so as best as you can with the people that you know who are all part of this same mindset, do it, good stuff with that.
I'm going to be very brief.
There are about 20 houses on this street. There are about 20 trucks on this street. In the future, there will be one truck on this street because no one else uses theirs but me. And so we only need one. And if they need one, then they can come borrow mine. And that's what I see in the future, because why do you need such a fancy truck to just drive to the store? I don't know. But that's all I gotta say.
The question had to do more with the LA region as opposed to the rest of the country. I've traveled the country, and I know that along the Northeast through Oregon and Washington, there's a great deal of food consciousness. There's a great deal of environmental consciousness. In fact, I would put LA rock bottom when it comes to food consciousness, environmental consciousness. And that's don't blame ourselves. I don't blame myself. I don't blame yourself. Because we're not surrounded by rainforests. And they have beautiful environments up there, so they have every reason to be conscious about the environment. But what we do have going for us, for those of you that dabble in the esoteric, LA happens to be the throat chakra of the planet. That means we are the voice of the planet, and that's indicative because Hollywood is here. The whole world's the Western culture comes out of Hollywood. It has been. So we have a perfect platform to raise food consciousness from where we happen to be, and we're doing it. We have two people here who are doing it. And what greater opportunity to do that than by putting it into film, putting it into radio, putting it into TV. I was actually watching the U.S. Farm and Ranchers Alliance. They had what was called the Food Dialogues right here in L.A. And they are in a panic because they do not the conventional agriculture does not know how to tell its story through the media. We are winning that battle because we have a story to tell. They don't. So we are, the more and more we tap into the ability to tell our story right here in Hollywood, the greater advantage we will have. And we better take advantage of it.
Thank you very much, Dan. And I think we just have a round of applause for all our panelists. Ideas came out of today's panel. A lot of dreams that I hope will be fulfilled one day. I don't know about your truck thing. Maybe that'll happen too.
Hopefully gas prices are going. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, thank you everyone. Local Blue is something. If you go to localblue.com, localblu.com, and click on app, we have an idea for how we could organize this local economy. So go to the app section of Local Blue and try out, sign up for the app. Iris is on there. She's offering her homemade cleansers or chapstick. So we're trying to get into that, local production and trading and bartering type of thing. Has on there offering a massage, and she needs belly dancing lessons. I don't know if that's too private for you, but it's on there. If you type in your zip code, you can see all the offerings and needs around you. So the idea is to get hyperlocal and to initiate hyperlocal exchanges. So go to localblue.com and sign up, create a profile. As more and more of us get on there, then we're gonna discover more and more local offers and needs. So yeah, thank you everyone for participating. We're gonna now do a raffle while John sets up with guitar. John and Adan set up on guitar and bass. Time for some, we don't have time for questions. No, yeah, we're just, we're cutting it close to that time where neighbors are gonna start getting mad if this thing keeps going.